Carl Jung, the revolutionary Swiss psychiatrist who spent his life exploring the deepest mysteries of the human psyche, understood that when you feel everything is boring, you're not experiencing a character flaw or a sign of laziness, but rather encountering one of the most significant psychological signals your unconscious mind can send. A profound message that you have become fundamentally disconnected from your authentic self and are living too much from what he called your persona, the carefully constructed mask you wear for the world, rather from the vibrant, creative, and infinitely complex depths of your true nature that hold the keys to genuine meaning and purpose in life. If you want to discover why Jung considered boredom to be one of the most important psychological experiences you can have, why it might actually be your psyche's way of calling you toward a more authentic and fulfilling existence, and how understanding this revolutionary perspective can transform your relationship with emptiness into a gateway for profound personal transformation, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and stay with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal about Jung's insights into boredom will fundamentally change how you understand this seemingly negative emotion and show you how to use it as a powerful tool for psychological growth and self-discovery. According to Jung's analytical psychology, the experience of finding everything boring is actually a sophisticated defense mechanism employed by your psyche when you've spent too long living inauthentically, conforming to external expectations, following paths laid out by others, or maintaining social roles and identities that don't reflect your deeper truth, causing your authentic self to withdraw its vital energy and leave you feeling flat, empty, disconnected, and unable to access the natural enthusiasm and curiosity that make life feel vibrant and worth living with full engagement. Jung observed that boredom often emerges as what he called a symptom of spiritual stagnation, a condition where your conscious ego has become too rigid, too predictable, and too disconnected from the spontaneous creativity and wisdom that constantly flows from your unconscious mind, creating an internal environment where nothing feels fresh, exciting, or personally meaningful because you've cut yourself off from the very source of psychological vitality that makes existence feel alive and purposeful. The revolutionary insight Jung brought to understanding boredom is that it's not a problem to be solved through external stimulation or entertainment, but rather a sacred threshold experience that signals your psyche is ready for what he called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are beneath all the layers of conditioning, expectation, and social programming that have accumulated over your lifetime and obscured your connection to your authentic nature and unique purpose in the world. Jung understood that when everything feels boring, you've fallen into what he termed mechanical living, a state where you go through the motions of daily existence without any real engagement, passion, or connection to the deeper currents of meaning that flow beneath the surface of ordinary experience, essentially sleepwalking through your days, while your soul yearns desperately for something more authentic, more personally meaningful, and more aligned with your deepest values and aspirations. According to Jung's theory of psychological types, chronic boredom often indicates that you've become too one-sided in your approach to life, overusing your dominant functions, whether thinking, feeling, sensation, or intuition, while neglecting and suppressing your inferior or less developed functions, creating a psychological imbalance that leaves you feeling stuck, stagnant, and unable to access the full spectrum of your human potential that could restore your sense of wonder, curiosity, and engagement with the richness of existence. Jung believed that the feeling that everything is boring frequently occurs during major life transitions, particularly during what he called the midlife crisis, when the goals, activities, and sources of meaning that once provided satisfaction and direction no longer feel compelling or relevant, and your psyche is calling for a fundamental transformation in how you understand yourself and your relationship to the world, demanding that you move beyond comfortable but ultimately limiting patterns and embrace new ways of being that honor your evolving consciousness. The most profound aspect of Jung's understanding of boredom is his recognition that it often represents a disguised form of what he called depression of meaning, a condition where you've lost touch with your personal myth, the unique story and purpose that gives your individual existence significance and direction within the larger tapestry of human experience, leaving you feeling like you're merely existing rather than truly living with intention, passion, and authentic engagement with the mystery and beauty of being alive. Jung observed that people who chronically feel bored have often become identified with what he called the ego persona system, living primarily from their rational, controlling mind while suppressing the spontaneous, creative, irrational, and deeply feeling aspects of their nature that provide the spark of genuine interest, the flame of curiosity, and the sense of wonder that transform ordinary moments into opportunities for discovery, growth, and meaningful connection with the deeper patterns of existence. According to Jung's analytical approach, boredom can serve as a powerful psychological function, acting as an internal alarm system that alerts you when you've become too comfortable with patterns that no longer serve your development, too attached to identities that have become prisons rather than authentic expressions of your evolving self, and too disconnected from the creative tension and dynamic flow of psychological energy that keeps life feeling fresh, challenging, and full of potential for unexpected discoveries and transformative experiences. Jung understood that the experience of universal boredom often accompanies what he called the provisional life, a psychological condition where you're perpetually waiting for your real life to begin, postponing authentic engagement with your current circumstances while fantasizing about future conditions that will somehow magically make everything interesting and meaningful, rather than learning to bring depth, presence, and creative engagement to whatever reality you're currently facing, and finding ways to extract meaning and value from your existing situation. The deeper psychological significance of boredom, according to Jung, lies in its connection to what he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that bridges the gap between conscious and unconscious minds, allowing for the emergence of new insights, creative solutions, and fresh perspectives that can transform mundane experiences into opportunities for psychological growth and the discovery of previously hidden dimensions of meaning and possibility that exist within every moment when approached with the right kind of attention and openness. Jung believed that when everything feels boring, it's often because you've lost connection to your shadow, the repressed and undeveloped aspects of your personality that contain not only the traits you've been taught to hide or deny, but also tremendous reserves of untapped creativity, passion, life force, and authentic vitality that have been pushed underground due to social conditioning, fear of disapproval, or the desire to maintain a safe but ultimately limiting sense of identity that protects you from risk but also prevents genuine aliveness. According to Jung's understanding of the psyche's compensatory function, boredom often emerges as a counterbalance to excessive consciousness, rationality, and control, serving as your unconscious mind's way of forcing you to slow down, turn inward, and create space for the emergence of new images, ideas, and possibilities that can only arise when you're not trying to make something happen, but instead allowing yourself to be receptive to what wants to emerge from the depths of your being. Jung observed that people who feel everything is boring have often developed what he called a negative relationship to the unconscious, fearing the unpredictability, intensity, and potentially disruptive power that comes with genuine psychological depth and authentic emotional engagement, preferring the apparent safety of surface living, even though it leaves them feeling chronically empty, restless, and dissatisfied with their experience of being alive in this magnificent and mysterious universe. The therapeutic approach Jung developed for working with existential boredom involved what he called amplification, a process of exploring the deeper symbolic, mythological, and archetypal meanings hidden within your experience of emptiness and disengagement, often discovering that what appears to be mere boredom is actually a disguised form of spiritual longing, a call from your deeper self to embark on a new phase of psychological development, or a sign that you're ready to outgrow limiting patterns and embrace a more expansive way of being in the world. Jung understood that chronic boredom can be a manifestation of what he termed spiritual inflation, a psychological condition where your ego has become too identified with being special, different, or somehow above ordinary human experiences, creating a sense of superiority or entitlement that prevents you from finding genuine interest in the simple, everyday aspects of life that actually contain profound wisdom, beauty, and opportunities for connection when approached with humility, curiosity, and authentic presence. According to Jung's analysis of psychological development, the feeling that everything is boring often occurs when you've become unconsciously identified with collective values, expectations, and definitions of success that don't reflect your individual nature and authentic desires, causing you to live according to what others think you should want rather than taking the time and courage necessary to discover what genuinely interests, motivates, and inspires you at the deepest level of your being. Jung believed that boredom frequently accompanies what he called the loss of soul,
A condition where you've become so focused on external achievements, social roles, rational pursuits, and meeting others' expectations that you've lost touch with the poetic, mysterious, imaginative, and deeply personal aspects of existence that provide what he called the juice of life. The meaning that makes every moment potentially rich with significance and possibility for authentic engagement and creative expression. The psychological function of boredom, according to Jung, is to force you into what he called active imagination, the practice of consciously engaging with your unconscious through creative activities, reflection, journaling, artistic expression, or simply sitting quietly and allowing images, feelings, and insights to emerge without trying to control or direct the process, creating an internal space where new possibilities can arise that have the power to restore your sense of wonder and enthusiasm for existence. Jung observed that the experience of finding everything boring often indicates that you've fallen into what he called the trap of literalism, taking life at face value and losing touch with the symbolic, metaphorical, and archetypal dimensions that are always present beneath the surface of ordinary experience but require a certain kind of imaginative engagement and poetic sensitivity to perceive and appreciate fully, transforming mundane reality into a rich tapestry of meaning and significance. According to Jung's understanding of the individuation process, boredom can serve as an important developmental crisis that forces you to confront fundamental questions about who you are, what you truly value, and how you want to live your life, pushing you beyond comfortable patterns and familiar identities toward a more authentic way of being that honors both your individual uniqueness and your connection to the larger web of existence, of which you are an integral and valuable part. Jung understood that people who successfully transformed their relationship to boredom learned to see it not as an enemy to be defeated or a problem to be solved through external stimulation, but as a wise teacher and valuable ally that's calling attention to areas of your life where you've become stuck, unconscious, or disconnected from your authentic nature, providing an opportunity to pause, reflect, and make conscious choices about how you want to engage with the precious and limited time you have in this incarnation. The deeper significance of boredom, according to Jung, lies in its connection to what he called the self with a capital S, the archetype of wholeness and the organizing principle of the psyche that transcends the limitations of the ego and connects you to something infinitely larger and more meaningful than your individual concerns, providing the sense of purpose, direction, and sacred connection that makes life feel significant and worth living with full presence and authentic engagement. Jung believed that overcoming chronic boredom requires what he called a fundamental shift in attitude, from passive consumption of experience to active participation in creating meaning, from waiting for life to become interesting to taking responsibility for bringing your full creative engagement to whatever circumstances you encounter, transforming yourself from a victim of external conditions into an agent of renewal, discovery, and conscious participation in the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. According to Jung's vision of psychological healing, the journey from boredom to authentic engagement involves learning to tolerate what he called creative tension, the uncomfortable but ultimately productive psychological space between the known and the unknown, the familiar and the mysterious, the secure and the uncertain, where new possibilities can emerge if you resist the temptation to escape into distraction, entertainment, or premature solutions that provide temporary relief but prevent the kind of genuine transformation that can restore your natural capacity for wonder, curiosity, and meaningful involvement with life. Jung observed that people who feel everything is boring have often lost touch with what he called their personal complexes, the emotionally charged clusters of thoughts, feelings, memories, and associations that provide the psychological energy and emotional intensity that makes life feel personally meaningful and engaging, leaving them in a state of emotional flatness that prevents genuine involvement with their circumstances and relationships, cutting them off from the very source of vitality that could restore their interest in existence. The revolutionary aspect of Jung's approach to boredom is his recognition that this seemingly negative experience often contains the seeds of its own transformation, serving as what he called a compensatory function that emerges when your conscious attitude has become too one-sided, too rigid, or too disconnected from the natural flow of psychological energy, creating an internal pressure that can eventually lead to breakthrough moments of insight, creativity, and renewed engagement if you're willing to work consciously with the psychological material that boredom is trying to bring to your attention. Jung understood that the experience of universal boredom frequently occurs when you've become disconnected from what he called your instinctual nature. The natural rhythms, desires, impulses, and biological wisdom that connect you to the life force itself, leaving you feeling artificially civilized but essentially deadened to the sources of spontaneous joy, authentic desire, and genuine engagement that make existence feel worthwhile and provide the motivation necessary for continued growth and creative expression. According to Jung's analytical psychology, boredom can be understood as a form of psychological resistance to development, where your ego is desperately clinging to familiar patterns, comfortable identities, and predictable ways of being that no longer serve your growth, while your unconscious is simultaneously pushing for change, evolution, and the emergence of new possibilities, creating an internal conflict that manifests as disinterest, apathy, and the feeling that nothing in the external world has the power to truly capture your attention or inspire your participation. Jung believed that the therapeutic value of boredom lies in its capacity to create what he called a fertile void, an empty psychological space that feels uncomfortable and meaningless from the ego's perspective, but actually provides the necessary conditions for the emergence of new insights, creative inspiration, and previously unknown aspects of your personality that have been waiting for the right moment to emerge and contribute their unique gifts to your ongoing process of becoming more fully yourself. The process Jung recommended for working with existential boredom involved what he called paying attention to what pays attention to you, meaning that instead of forcing yourself to be interested in things you think you should care about, you begin to notice what spontaneously captures your curiosity, even briefly, and follow these threads of genuine interest wherever they might lead, gradually rebuilding your capacity for authentic engagement through small but meaningful connections to experiences that resonate with your deeper nature and true preferences. Jung observed that chronic boredom often accompanies what he called premature closure, a psychological condition where you've decided too quickly and definitively what life is about, what you're capable of, and what's possible for you, effectively shutting down your natural curiosity and openness to new experiences in favor of maintaining a fixed identity that feels safe and predictable, but ultimately proves to be a psychological prison that suffocates your authentic vitality and prevents the kind of growth and development that keeps life feeling fresh and meaningful. According to Jung's understanding of psychological transformation, the resolution of boredom doesn't come through finding the right external activity, relationship, or life circumstance, but through developing what he called a living relationship with your unconscious. Learning to dialogue with the deeper layers of your psyche through dreams, active imagination, creative expression, and other practices that allow you to access the wisdom and vitality that's always available beneath the surface of ordinary consciousness, but require conscious effort and sustained attention to develop and maintain. Jung understood that people who successfully overcome chronic boredom have learned to embrace what he called the paradoxical nature of existence, accepting that life contains both meaning and meaninglessness, both engagement and boredom, and that attempting to maintain a constant state of interest and enthusiasm is not only impossible, but actually prevents the natural rhythm of expansion and contraction that characterizes all healthy psychological processes, and allows for the integration of experience at deeper levels of understanding and wisdom. The ultimate insight Jung offered about boredom is that it represents what he called a crisis of meaning that can become a doorway to transformation if approached with the right attitude and understanding. Recognizing that your psyche is not working against you when it withdraws its energy from activities and pursuits that once provided satisfaction, but is instead calling you toward a deeper level of authentic engagement that honors both your individual uniqueness and your connection to the larger patterns of existence that give human life its ultimate significance and purpose. According to Jung's vision of human development, overcoming the feeling that everything is boring requires what he called the courage to be ordinary. Accepting that profound meaning and authentic engagement don't always come in dramatic or exciting forms, but can be found in the simple everyday acts of presence, attention, and genuine care that transform routine activities into opportunities for connection, creativity,
and the kind of quiet satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with your deepest values and most authentic way of being in the world. Jung believed that the journey from boredom to meaning involves learning to see your life as what he called a work of art in progress, where you are simultaneously the artist and the canvas, constantly creating and recreating yourself through conscious choices, authentic relationships, creative expression, and the ongoing process of integrating your experiences into an increasingly coherent and personally meaningful narrative that honors both your individual journey and your participation in the larger human story of growth, discovery, and the evolution of consciousness itself.